Welcome to
Ask Us
Anything. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning into today's Netflix animation panel, where we'll be talking about recruiting and CG roles. My name is Jane Lee. I'm an animation exec here at Netflix, and I'm joined by several of my stunning colleagues. They're now going to introduce themselves. Please say your name, your pronouns. I myself am a she, her person, who you recruit for, and fun fact, which is in a biopic about you, what actor is gonna play you? Think on that. I'm stalling for time so that Robin can think about this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Robin.
Hi, my name is Robin Lynn. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am one of the outreach and engagement managers for Netflix Animation, specializing in art. And who would pay me in the biopic? Who else but Paul Rubens?
Pee Wee Herman himself.
Pee Wee Herman himself, little bow tie, little style.
Hello, I'm Polly Weeks. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm a recruiting researcher for the production, post, and CG roles for series and features. And who would play me in a biopic? I think it would be Tiffany Amber Thiessen.
I love that.
Yeah. My name is Michelle Duffy. Pronouns are she, her, hers. I support recruiting for our VFX and virtual production teams on the production side. And the person that would play me in a movie would have to probably be Drew Barrymore.
Oh, I
like it.
Yeah.
My name's Grazia Como. My pronouns are she, her. I am a program manager for our emerging talent program, which focuses on story. Who would play me? I think it's a given. It would be Sandra Bullock.
Oh, that's so accurate. I love that.
Hi, I'm Sneha Shukla, and I'm a recruiting researcher for art and story roles, but I come from a character effects background. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and who would play me in a biopic? It would probably be Hannah Simone, aka Cece from New Girl. I would love that.
Yes. Okay, everyone out in the universe, you just heard. I will even say mine. You know who's gonna play me in a biopic about me? Paul Rudd. Think on that.
Amazing.
I would be okay with that. And now, okay, to the actual subject at hand, which is recruiting and CG roles. Folks, can all of you talk to me about where do you source your candidates?
Everywhere. I scour LinkedIn, ArtStation, IMDb. I even go on Reddit. You name it. Like scouring the internet for sure.
Yeah, Twitter and Instagram are big ones too.
I love TikTok for talent. I feel like it is an emerging market for young talent that knows how to use the platform. I learn new things from people on that app every day, so it's been great to be able to connect with artists in the space there.
Michelle, that is the first time in any of these panels that someone had mentioned TikTok. I would love for you to dig in a little bit more about what types of skill sets or things do you see on TikTok that might also be distinct from other platforms?
Yeah, so TikTok has a lot of really unique editing features. So if you are trying to showcase particular parts of your portfolio in a way that don't really fit in a linear reel, you can mash them up in a way that's way more digestible in TikTok. There's also the viral aspect of it where certain things just take off within communities of people. And as someone on that app, you can subscribe to different hashtags and sounds and really discover new artists in a way that feels more natural than an algorithm may just spit out, because you can opt into following different types of artists, different types of content and things like that. So it's been really helpful in that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go. She's so good. Old school here, I go to IMDb, and from IMDb, I build a list, and then I go to LinkedIn, and first pro tip of the event, please have your contact information on your LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
We can't find, or we can find you. We're pretty accomplished stalkers, as you may have heard, but it makes it so much easier to find you if you have your email address right there on your profile.
Yes.
Make
Yes.
it easy for us, please.
Yeah. And
I
one
feel
note on
Oh, keep going, Michelle.
And one note on IMDb, even if it's a role, if you worked on a project that was uncredited or not in the specific area that you are applying for a role on, just more information on IMDb is better than none, because it helps us connect all those dots between projects that we know someone has worked on and an art style or a production style that could fit with a project that we're working on. So the more information, the better.
Oh, that's so
And IMDb is all self-reported, so you're responsible for maintaining your own profile. Don't rely on a studio to populate that for you.
Oh, tis true. Tis true.
Hot tip.
So many hot tips within like the first 5 minutes. Amazing. I know, Paul, you had mentioned a bunch of different platforms and places where you kind of look for different candidates, and saying how you also kind of talk about different platforms and stuff. Do you find that for certain types of roles, I go to this place, and for these type of roles, I go to that place, or is it kind of agnostic of all that stuff?
I think it's a good combination of all of the places, right? I spend a lot of time on ArtStation for CG, and then I check IMDb and LinkedIn and you name it. You know, I think as Robin's point, like the easier it is for us to like identify like your information and like what's your work, like that's the best thing for us.
Yeah, I agree. I think everywhere you can find artists on every sort of platform. It's just a matter of how often they update their websites or update with their reels. So that's also really helpful. Please keep your reels or websites updated with your recent work.
Yes, I love that. And then, you know, obviously everybody's looking for folks all over the place. Do you have any hot tips, pro tips, or suggestions on how folks can make sure that they pop or, you know, distinguish themselves from other folks in the crowd?
This is like a base level. Have a friend try and find you. Like, just give them your name, maybe a credit, and see how long it takes them to find you on Google. If they can find you in like 2 or 3 clicks, you're doing great. If they're 10, 15 clicks in and they still can't find you, you need to kind of work on your presence, get that up, bubble that information up so it's more easy for us to find.
Yeah, and to add to that, just having a really nice, clean resume, an updated reel with, you know, all of your like best, what you think is your best work in the beginning of the reel. And again, contact information is huge. Make it easy for us to find you. And I would say those are the tips to stand out.
Yeah. And I think the other part is just be yourself, like be your authentic self. It can be really hard to put together something that's so personal to you, like a reel or a portfolio, and put it out there. And we get very excited about seeing who you are show up on paper or in video. So don't forget that if you get a call back or you get reached out by someone, don't suddenly turn into a completely different person. Just be yourself throughout.
And then just to draft off of that, Michelle, and everybody here, in terms of like showing your personality, I'm assuming there's like a fine line of being like, this is my authentic self, and then also like, this is also me as a professional or as a polished person. Any guidance in terms of towing that line?
I mean, like I love cats a lot, but I don't have like a cat watermark on my resume, and my LinkedIn profile picture isn't of me and my cat necessarily. I mean, it probably should be because he's cute. But I think that brings up a good point. You do want to bring out the professional side of yourself, but don't forget about those things that make you fun and make you memorable and make you someone that people will want to work with and collaborate with. So some tips on that for maybe like how to draw the line is put yourself in the position of the hiring manager or the recruiter and say, you know, what are the things I'm going to remember about this person, and maybe lead with that and see what you would be receptive to on the other end of that conversation.
I think also don't try and be someone that you think we are looking for, right? Don't you know, break a sweat like, oh no, they're only looking for this type of person. I have to be yourself. Like Michelle said, you know, there's a level of professionalism. I will say, watch what you're using for your LinkedIn profile picture. I've seen some funky images up there. but don't try and fit a mold that you think we are looking for. That's not going to be the way. You can't sustain that energy if you land the job. You can't pretend to be somebody else every day. You'll go crazy.
Yep.
I'd like to add to what Michelle was saying. I think working on your senior thesis is a great example of showcasing who you are within that project. And I think Grazia actually remembers my senior thesis from like 5 or 6 years ago. And I was surprised that she remembered it after all these years. So that's a really good time, I guess, to showcase who you are and what interests you.
Yeah, sorry, Jane, I was going to add to that. I think there's two things. There's, especially in CG, for CG roles, you know, there's the resume piece, your LinkedIn presence, and making it easy for people to find your work and contact you. But honing in a little bit on the reels themselves, like I think that's where you can put a lot of your personality in terms of the stories that you're trying to tell, either through, if you're interested in lighting, if you're interested in character animation or texturing. There's so much that you can showcase in terms of not only your skills, but in your personality, in terms of the choices that you're making and what you're working on and how you curate that reel and bring that all together. So yes, Sneha had a wonderful story, and to this day, I remember it distinctly. And that was one of the things that really stood out in terms of, you know, 5 years later, like I can tell you exactly what was on her reel.
I mean, you know, sorry, like Sneha and Grazia, that 100p put you both on the spot in terms of like using kind of Sneha, your experience is kind of like a case study. Grazia, I'd love to hear a little bit more about like what are other things you had mentioned the story of Sneha's reel really popped to you. Are there any other elements that we can kind of like pull out and be like, hey, like X, Y, Z that also might be helpful advice for prospective candidates?
Yeah, I mean, for Sneha, it was very clear when she reached out to me or when we first connected that she was really interested in character effects. And it was very clear, not only in terms of how she spoke about it and how she talked about it from just her passion in wanting to do this and the technicality of it. But then when I went to look at her reel, everything that on her reel was addressing her focus on character effects. So she had this great character, and we're talking about like 5 years ago, where recruiting for character effects, it was rare to find a female interested in character effects or effects in general. And then also her story and her subject matter, which Sneha, I feel like I won't do it the best justice, so I'll let you talk about that. But her character had is it the burqa, a face veil, and then a skirt. And, you know, she was just telling the story about this character and then how basically the face veil and really focusing on the clothing and how it was interacting with the character. And that piece alone was, not only was the story really unique and different, but she then approached it from a CFX perspective of like, here's my character, here's her costume, and here's how I'm animating it. And that alone like was a really great way to showcase all those different pieces.
Thank you. Yeah, I can speak more to, I guess, the story and the inspiration behind it. So I'm really passionate about where my family comes from. They come from India. So I love Indian culture, and sort of showcasing that through my work in school was really important to me. So my thesis was basically about this girl who is trying to break through the strict structures of this like chauvinistic masculine society. And so like she basically wore this burqa and dreamed of like getting out of her place, and like the cloth shredded off her body and she jumped into this oasis, and at the end of it you realize it's all a dream, and she's just like waiting and hoping to leave. So
Beautiful.
that was the story.
I literally got goosebumps, and I was like, wow, like Grazia, in terms of what you're saying about like really imbuing personality, but also finding a way to have that complement like the technical skills, I feel like is such a hot tip. Thank you both. That's awesome. I'm gonna like 100p now shift gears again and be like, hey, what is the best way for a candidate to reach out to a recruiter?
Well, find out where they where they hang out professionally, right? So I know don't mean like go to the local bar, but are they on Instagram? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they are they at events like this? Are they at a Lightbox? Are they at one of these? And don't be shy about reaching out and introducing yourself. And here's another little thing, right? It's if you reach out and say, hey, do you have a job for me? Do you have a job? Do you have a job? Do you have a job? That may not get you the best response. But if you say, do you have any advice for me? Right? Can we just talk about where I'm at and what I'm going through? That really opens the door. It's much more conversational, much more easy to engage.
That's how I got this job. Oh, sorry, Polly.
No, you're good.
I asked Grazia for advice, basically, on how to transition into recruiting. And Grazia and I had known each other through her previous company, just by me reaching out and not being necessarily too, I guess, annoying. That's not the right word. Annoying about it, but asking, like, I guess, questions about if the studios were hiring or like any advice on transitioning, if that's what candidates are interested in. So, Polly, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Robin was saying and what you're saying, Sneha, is that just connecting with somebody is a great start. And when people, like, I like it when people reach out to me when they're pretty like transparent and they say like, hey, I'm interested in this type of work. Especially if, they cover multiple disciplines. Like I like to hear like what that person wants to do. Because it also makes it easier for when I am looking at different roles that we have like coming available, like where that person might be a good fit too.
And then
My advice, I just wanted to add too, like, this is such a creative space. Like, don't be afraid to get creative. I think, like getting tweeted at about like, hey, I don't have Twitter, but let's say there's an @ handle, like, hey, @ Michelle Duffy, like, just sent you my reel, can't wait to hear your feedback on it, or whatever that case may be. Like, I love the idea
on TikTok.
On TikTok, yes, like get out there and get creative with how you're positioning yourself. And I think for me and a lot of recruiters in this industry is we will put the same effort in our reply as you put into your application. So if you really are thoughtful, if your reach out is genuine and intentional, you'll get that same response from us. If you just spam email us about 46 different jobs at the studio and say, like, here's my reel, let me know what I'm a fit for, it's going to be a lot harder for us to be intentional and give you that same level of attention in return.
Look at you, Michelle, taking down templated reach out letters. Boom, slam those templates.
Very well veiled way of being like, do not give us template-ish, please.
Yeah.
What
and
about
if I can just quickly add, I think just going back to Sneha is, I think if you have the opportunity to make an initial connection, be it in person or networking, like, I think one of the things is feel comfortable to continue to have that. I think that's what worked out really well for Sneha, is like we had this initial contact and then it just continued. And it wasn't, like it could have been months, it could have been a year later, it could have been 2 years later, but there was just this, hey, Grazia, or it might have been like, hey, Sneha, I may have this coming up. I know that when, I originally looked at your work, there could be a whole lot of things, but I think I guess the point I'm trying to get to is like, once you make that initial connection, just continue that connection. And that's really important because I do think, especially if you're just starting out in the industry, it's hard. It can be a little awkward. So just be comfortable to feel like once you've made that connection, you feel like you have to continue it.
That's actually a really great segue to the next question, which is like, how frequently do you expect a prospective candidate to reach out? And like, what is too frequent and what is too infrequent?
My tip on that is it's not necessarily around frequency, but more about the expectations that are set. So if you do get on the phone with a recruiter, don't be afraid to say like, should I expect a call from you as a next step? Should I expect an email from you? Will you be getting me in touch with someone from your larger team? Like, set some expectations with them ahead of time and then hold them accountable to getting back to you. Yes, they're busy, but so are you as a candidate. Like, you have a lot going on too, and it should be a two-way street. So definitely set expectations around what that frequency should be on both sides.
some action items in there, right?
Yeah.
And I think the standard answer for this, and it's standard because it's right, is when you have something new to show us, right? If you're just going to be submitting the same work, maybe recut or whatever, that's probably not the best thing. But if you have new shots that show a different skill, it's like if you've done cloth hair, it's like, oh, I'm also doing this. That's the time to reach out and go, hey, I know you saw what I did. Here's what I've done recently. And the cadence of that is going to be when you're able to create that work, and that work is at a high enough level where you want to share.
Yeah, I think every time I wrapped up on a movie or a production, that's when I would be in contact with recruiters and say, hey, I've wrapped up on this project, just wanted to check in and see if you guys were hiring or if you wanted to hear more about what I did on this show, because sometimes it takes a little bit to get your work from the studios. So also keeping that in mind would be helpful, but just letting recruiters know in general helps a lot.
You bring up a good point, Sneha. Don't show us embargoed work, right? If the work has not been released, don't show us, because that tells us that you might do that to us. So hang on to that work until it's been cleared for show.
Super helpful. I think everyone kind of touched on this next question lightly, but just to be like more overt about it, do you have any specific advice for like newcomers to this industry, people that are trying to break in, or like for you, Sneha, knowing that you have an artist background, like, is there anything that you know now that you wish you had known when you had first started out?
Well, advice that I can give would be look for a mentor that can help you along the way, because I owe like my entire career, even in recruiting, to my mentor from college. I'm going to give him a shout out, Ben Guastella. He helped a lot. He was a CFX artist at PDI DreamWorks and was my teacher at school. And even at Noman, I went to Noman for a bit. And Polly, shout outs to you. Yeah, I would ask Ben for questions all the time, and he was just really helpful. And so having a mentor just really helped me a lot. And I think other students or even people that are just interested in getting into the industry, that would help them. And don't be afraid to ask artists that you've met to help you out, because that's also what I did. Is I met people from other studios and I asked them to give me advice or check my reel and see how I could do better. And so I found that really beneficial.
I would agree with that. I think that the feedback is probably the best thing to help you grow, especially if your portfolio maybe isn't aligned with the role that you're applying for. Asking like a colleague or somebody that you know for that and like what they recommend that you could do better is great too. I circle back to what Michelle said earlier, be yourself. Like that is another thing too. Like, you know, I know it can be really challenging during an interview or during an application process, but be yourself. That is, I would say, my number one tip. And also, I would recommend like on your reel, like having a breakdown of the work that you actually did, because for CG specific roles, like sometimes people will just put a general shot, and our production teams are really looking to see what you did on that specific shot. So some sort of breakdown, whether that's in the reel or listed below it, would be great.
I've seen reels where it's really clever, where everything that the artist did not do will be in black and white, and the things that they did will be in color. So it makes it really clear, like, this is my work, that's somebody else's work.
Oh, I love that. I really love that you guys talked about mentorship. Do you have any advice on how somebody can find that mentorship, and like how can they approach someone to, you know, fill that role for them?
Boy,
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Sneh.
Oh no, you go ahead.
Well, this is where working your networks, right? This is finding people in the industry and reaching out to them. And like we talked about earlier, asking for advice. Don't hit them up for a job. Don't, you know, come on so strong, but this is what I'm working on. This is what my passion is. Can we just talk for a few minutes? And here's the thing, if they give you advice on your work, if you show them a shot, and you can, you know, you're working with computers and that might be difficult, but take those notes, implement them into the work, and then re-show them and show that you know, like, I took what you said to heart enough to spend my time to make the change and re-present it to you. Because guess what? That's what the production process is. That's what visual effects artists do. They go back, they submit, they get notes, they resubmit. So showing that you know that earlier on in your career really displays that you have the mindset of working in the production environment.
Yeah, I would also say if you are in school, then asking the head of your department to add a class that caters to what you're interested in. That's what helped me a lot, is I asked the head of the department to add a visual effects class. And that's how he ended up hiring Ben. And then that's how I got him to be my mentor. Was I had like my first cloth and hair assignment, and then I just asked him like, hey, can you mentor me?
I was gonna say that if you're at school too, there's usually clubs or different groups that you can join, and sometimes schools will actually have mentorship programs. So that's something else that you can do. There's a bunch of groups that are on like LinkedIn that you can join that are CG specific or visual effects specific that, you can start being active in and probably gain a mentor that way as well too.
I mean, I'll just say one quick thing. Robin Lynn probably doesn't know that he's my mentor, but he is. And a part of that is because you don't necessarily have to go in and say, like, propose to your mentor and say, like, would you be my mentor? It doesn't have to be as formal as that. Robin and I have known each other for like a decade now or something.
It feels like a decade.
Yeah,
Like
and part of it is just what everybody else is saying, just having a natural conversation with someone, asking them for advice, realizing that there are parts of your relationship that you may be mentoring them in and vice versa. It's not as formal. It doesn't have to be as formal of a role, especially outside of like the school environment. And you might find down the line when you're in a panel with someone that you were actually their mentor as well. So
sorry, I'm getting a little misty. Is it smoky in here? Is it dusty in here?
What a lovely panel surprise.
It's just all about that connection.
It is.
Great.
Awesome.
I just wanted to quickly go back to Sneha's comment about like going to the school, the head of the school. I think this is something that, having worked in university relation and interacting with a lot of schools, I think one of the things is like, take ownership of your education. If you are in a program and you are finding that you really want to be doing something that program is not offering, it's okay to take ownership of that and question it. Like, question your education, question your program. You don't know what you don't know. And so I think those are things too. If you are fortunate enough to be in a school and are in a program, then definitely, take ownership of your education to make sure that, as you learn, as you develop, as you're figuring things out and getting a better understanding of the industry and what the industry is looking for, then I would encourage, to take ownership of that. And then, if you don't have access to, schools or programs, that may be, aligning and giving you the skill sets, then definitely, there, to Polly's point, there's a lot of online resources out there, and lean into those and, leverage that peer group. If you are in school, the person that you are sitting next to or whatever it might be, that is eventually the person that you may be working with in the industry. So I always encourage, like, start building your network as early as possible. Because you never know, your mentor will be sitting on the same panel as you, or the person that you met 5 years ago, you are now, like, it is a very small, and in many ways a very small industry. So start very early on tapping into those resources, taking the ownership of your education, and continuing that network.
Such a good point, Grazia. And, when you're graduating from school, someone's going to be the first person to land that job in the industry. And when they land that job, don't be jealous, be their best friend, right? Talk to them. How did you get it? What advice can you offer? Because look, we recruiters, when we're looking for new people, we turn to our teams and say, who do you know? Who do you like working with? And you want to be that person, like, I know someone who's right on the cusp. Let's bring him in and talk to them. So don't be jealous. That's the beginning of your network. That first person who gets the job, that's the seed that's planted for everything to grow out of.
Love it. I love it. It's like, I love where you're like, don't be jealous, but also like, oh my gosh, Today's panel, a spider web of interconnected folks.
Well, visual effects like animation is a tight little web. Everybody knows everybody who knows everybody.
That makes
And
sense.
most people know Robin Lynn.
You know, one time I was drunk. Why will people forgive me?
Robin.
That's the After Dark panel.
Netflix.
Animation After, Dark.
Wait,
Love it.
can we coin? Ooh.
We need to trademark that.
I think we have something there.
Okay. Y'all, a kind of a spicy question.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't think it's too controversial, but I just want to make you go, huh? So for folks that might be coming from commercial houses or folks that might have more experience outside of the US where they're generalists, so like folks that are like, hey, I model, I rig, I do all these things all the way up to lighting, do you consider is that like a positive, or is it preferable for someone to be more of a specialist versus a generalist?
I would say it's a positive. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having a wide variety of skills. I would say even the people that specialize always are a generalist in some facet, right? Most of the time. So I don't think that it hinders or makes something better unless it is a very specific generalist role that we're trying to fill. So I would say it's a good thing.
Yeah, what we're looking for is like we used to call it T-shaped, right? Someone who had a base level of a lot of skills, but then deep dived into one. But look, we're setting up a sizzle team at Netflix Animation that is nothing but rock star generalists who can do everything. So those people, if they get to a certain level where they can do a lot of things really good, they are worth their weight and mine in gold.
And just from a production side, I think the pace in which commercial houses ship content is a lot more similar to like a series at a studio. So I would say like that could be a really good pathway into that track. And features, it's also like not out of the question. Their production cycle is just a lot different. So from just like an apples to apples, commercial to series tends to translate really well.
Commercials usually 10 times faster than series.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Okay, keep going.
I would say, I think for me to help answer that question, I would say do your research on the company. I think it depends. Coming from another studio where it was specifically CG feature animated films, I will tell you they were looking for specialists. I would always say like a jack of all trades, but a master of none. So it really depends. You know, I know coming from commercials and visual effects, being a generalist is really great because of the pacing and having someone who can jump in and, you know, rig and animate and throw in some effects and do some character effects in there is really valuable. But in some other studios, they do look for very specific things. So while you're a generalist, what is your emphasis? Is your emphasis on lighting? Is your emphasis in texturing? Because there's just going to be a certain level of honing in on that particular craft that, especially for emerging talent, that's going to help you stand out to be able to have those opportunities. And you'll see it in job postings where we're looking for lighters, we're looking for CG lighters, we're looking for effects artists or character animators. And so then that's where they're going to be really looking to see how you hone into those particular areas. Having knowledge of like, you know, you're in this bigger picture of a production pipeline. So how, you know, how your work is going to be handed off to other parts of the pipeline and understanding that full production pipeline and how those departments integrate together is really important. So having that generalist knowledge, but then honing in on your specific skill sets would really help. I mean, that's kind of what stood out with Sneha's. Having a really good generalist background, but being very specific to character effects.
And I would say ultimately it depends on the production and like what they're looking for too, right? And what role. So it just really depends on what they need.
Yeah, at other studios that I worked at previously, character effects was linked together with rigging, and look dev had modeling and texturing. So, modeling, texturing, and grooming.
Mhm.
And so sometimes like knowing either or would be really helpful depending on which company you go to. Yeah.
I love it. So being a generalist, thumbs up. Knowing what your concentration might be, also beneficial on top of that. Yes.
Double thumbs up.
Yes.
Got it.
Second half of the spicy question, which is differences, or how do skills transfer between features and series and vice versa?
I would say, to Michelle's point earlier, it's usually timeline is probably the biggest difference, right? So I think the skills are definitely transferable.
Definitely transferable. One of the companies I worked at, I was on a bunch of features and then also on a TV show. And this was specifically for live action. And so the main difference I saw, to Michelle and Polly's point, was series was obviously more fast paced, which arguably is great. It's great to be efficient and quick with your shot work. And in turn, that helps you sort of go into features with that mindset of being efficient.
Sometimes feature can be fast too, though.
Yeah. Series is definitely going to be a sprint, and feature is going to be a marathon. So just the way, like if you're a character rigger and you're writing a tool, if it's in series, it may just have to solve one specific problem for one specific shot. But if it's over a feature where you're in production for maybe a year, that tool has to be really refined and elegant and be able to take on multiple problem solves. So that's what I would keep in mind.
Gotcha. That's super interesting. Folks, I'm shifting gears and I don't have a good transition, so I'm just telling you I'm switching gears. Yeah, oh, that's true. Screen wipe. Um, so in terms of these roles that you've been talking about, are there any entry level roles for like folks that are recently graduated from university or just like new to the industry? Can you talk about what those roles might look like?
I would say that it depends on the production. So some roles, depending on what the production needs, like they might want somebody with more experience, or they might be open to any. So I would say it depends on your work, right? If your work quality is incredible and it matches what our production's looking for, then entry level is definitely a possibility.
I don't know, when I was hiring for CG for another studio, entry-level animators, right? Because animators are actors, and you can be a great actor like Dakota Fanning at age 12, or you can be doing dinner theater at the local, whatever, when you're 80. So animation was something that was a really easy transition for recent grads to get into the system. And they could also animate toes and tails. They could be, just kind of get some background character shots and then work up into it.
Gotcha. Okay, that's super helpful. And on that note of like thinking about the experience for newly graduated folks or folks that are new to the industry, would be delighted if y'all could kind of give some visibility into what the recruiting process is like. So like after somebody submits their material to you, and maybe you can also talk about like the different places where folks can submit their stuff, like what happens? I don't even know.
Wow, we're breaking through the wall here and exploring the mysteries of what happens to your data.
Inside of recruiting. Well, I guess for starters, you can apply through the website. Usually we have job postings on. Sometimes we scour all of our applications, or we scour the internet depending on the need. And then it does take us a while to go through applications if you apply through the website. So be patient with us as we comb through everything. And then usually if something's a fit, then we share it with our teams that are hiring, our production teams. And we usually reach out if it's something that aligns.
And then, so if someone hasn't heard from any recruiter in months, is it assumed that they're not the right fit? Like what should be the next action item for those candidates be?
I think for me, when I see applicants come through and I see a lot of potential in someone and the role that I have just isn't the right fit, like if I have the time, like with the volume being what it is, I will try and reach out and build a rapport with them. So, you know, don't give up hope. Like to Polly's point, we have a lot of people that apply and get online, and we want to give everyone that same level of consideration. So it does take a bit of time, but you know, I see Netflix, especially as a company that rarely does the door fully close. It's just open for another opportunity. So don't be a pessimist. Don't be cynical. Keep a good attitude and continue to engage with us in other channels. We do a lot of really fun like webinars around inclusion and diversity, around artist programs that the animation team has been doing, which is fantastic. Get involved. If you can get a mentor from that particular company, just stay up to speed on what they're doing, and don't lose hope if you haven't heard from somebody. It could just be that the opportunity wasn't the right fit.
Yeah.
Yep. We rarely say no, but we often say not now.
Yeah.
So that's actually a good point, Robin. You're saying like not now. So then knowing that if this specific role over here wasn't the right fit for somebody, when is, it's obviously not like a rejection forever for life or anything like that. So then when is a good time to like touch base again or try to reapply? Like, would you get thrown off if someone's like immediately reapply, or do you feel like someone needs to like wait weeks, months? Or?
I would say when you have more work or something that is applicable to a new position, right? Yeah.
You know, this is a good opportunity for us to talk about one of my favorite pet peeves, which is shotgunning the jobs page, which means applying for multiple roles that aren't necessarily in the same job family, right? So if you're applying for a CG modeler role and then something that's adjacent to CG modeling, that makes sense. But if you're applying for editorial, coordinator, PA, modeler, you know, what that may tell the recruiter is you're so anxious to get to the dance that you don't care who takes you. And that's not the best message to send. So be really curative, really look at those job descriptions like, okay, I can do this, I can do that. And this is another pet peeve of mine. Guys, right, we'll apply for the job if we have 40% of the skills. Like, well, I can do that, I'll go for it. Women tend to wait until they have like 90% above before they apply. So don't let that be a barrier. You know, please, 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 if you think you've got it, if it aligns to what your skills are, you don't have to tick every box, just the majority of the boxes, and apply.
Love that. That brings me to my next favorite subject, which is I'd love to go around and hear some other people's pet peeves.
Mine is if I'm offering feedback or I give the opportunity for feedback to the candidate and say like, you know, great reel, not a fit for our particular project. As you have more experience in this particular space, like I would love to stay in touch. I offer that up and then it's immediate like, well, I just redid my reel, take a look and let me know what you think. And they've just really pulled together something that doesn't show that they listened to that feedback or that they took it to heart. I'd much rather give that feedback to someone and see them iterate on it over the course of 3 to 9 months and say, wow, you've really come a long way. You've taken it to heart. People that just, it goes in one ear and out the other and then bleh onto their, whatever their work is, like that's not showing the growth that our team is going to expect of you when you start.
I have another if nobody has one.
Robin just wants to complain.
I'm thinking about what mine is. I think mine is like the follow-up part of it is when, Michelle, similar to what you're saying, like when people don't have anything to necessarily follow up with, or they're just like, or if you said, you know, we'll be in touch soon and they've, you know, a day later, like, hey, I haven't heard from you. And you're like, it's only been a day. Give me some time. I would say that's a pet peeve of mine.
Noted.
A pet peeve of mine as a candidate was not hearing back from recruiters. Like that was a big pet peeve of mine. Sorry, but I mean, everyone here is doing great. Everyone here is doing great. But that was a big pet peeve of mine. But now that I'm in recruiting, it's hard to get back to all the messages and all the emails. So honestly, I've learned that everyone just needs to be patient and eventually we will get back. but don't take it to heart.
Is it okay to say that another pet peeve of mine is not putting your contact information on your website or reel?
That's the common
True.
denominator of
That's
pet
all I feel like
peeves.
that's the PSA of the world is everybody put your contact info on every single platform and put some sort of contact or credit on every piece of artwork. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yes.
Grazia, what about you? Do you got any pet peeves?
You know, it's to Sneha's point, it's hard to have a pet peeve because, right, like for everyone, we have our challenges within our industry and our space and our day-to-days. And so I think it comes down to a lot of just patience and timing. I won't sit here and say, like, you know, reach out to me. Definitely, I want to network. Definitely, I want to connect. Am I going to get back to you right away? I can't guarantee that. But I will always do my best. Even if I don't send back a message or whatever, I am looking. But I will never put myself in a place to say, like, make promises that I know I just can't keep.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just something to be mindful in this industry. You know, it is about patience. It's just timing, patience and timing. And then you just don't give up. Just don't. Like, if you're not getting responses, it's not necessarily that maybe you don't have the skill sets. It could be. I think that goes back to a lot of our conversations earlier, is like, start building that network very early, start getting feedback, you know, put your work out there as soon as possible, even before you're applying for the job, to even know if you're in that ballpark. If this is even what you want to do, you may find out, like, you know, no, I actually don't want to do this. This after like all the feedback and learning, like, maybe this isn't what I want to be doing. So I think for me, I think it starts there. So, so it's hard for me to say I have a pet peeve. I think contact information is a given. It shouldn't even be a conversation. Like, it's just a given.
and yet here we are.
I know. So I think it just comes down to, like, if you're really passionate about wanting to be in the industry and you're really, and knowing that, you know, there's work, it's right, you have to showcase your skills, your craft. And in this case, it's reels, or storyboards, or whatever it may be, it's art. You need to get that work out there and have it visible. So people can, so you get the feedback that you need to continue to grow and develop.
Robin, I'm feeling magnanimous if you want to share.
Well, okay. So this, and anyone who's heard me lecture before is going to go, oh God, he's saying that again. If you love chocolate, it doesn't mean you want to work in a chocolate factory, right? You need to separate the product from the process. There are fantastic animation products, right? The studios, they make fantastic films, but the process they go to get them done might be very, very difficult and require long hours and really throw your work-life balance into chaos. Please, please, please research the studio's culture, right? Research how they do the work. What's their reputation? How do they treat their talent? Do they treat their talent really well? Or do they treat their talent like robots in a machine, right? And then look at the product. They may do meh work, but they treat their employees like gold. And that's where you want to be. This is where sites like Glassdoor really, really, really come into play. Reach out to people who work there and ask, what's it like to work there? Is it fun? Do you have a good time? Do they treat you well? You know, do your homework. Don't just fall in love with, oh my gosh, those images are beautiful. Yeah, they're beautiful. But is there blood on the reels? You know, let's separate that stuff out.
I like that it turned into like darkness again. Okay, I wanted to put one last question in before we wrap this baby up, but would love to hear about what types of CG roles have you all hired recently or been hiring for?
So many. We've hired CG generalists, CG supervisor, character designers, CG environment artists. We've recently hired a VFX supervisor. We were hiring a ton of technical directors recently. Previs artist, like what else? You name it.
All right. I love that because I think, you know, we do have a lot of awesome 2D stuff coming out of our studio, but that's all to say there's some amazing CG things coming your way.
Well, and I can also just add that from like a virtual production side, I know that that's like an emerging space within our industry, especially given how we're all virtual right now, by and large. And so one thing I reached out to our leader of that team, his name's Girish Balakrishnan, about his advice about like artists getting into this space. And I'll just read it because I'm not smart enough to come up with this on my own. He said, Unreal Engine is a piece of software and look development is a job category. Similar to Blender or Maya, proficiency in those tools is important, but the artistry comes into the area of specialty. Artists in Unreal focus heavily on lighting, composition, and rapid prototyping. And that was all fascinating to me, but also made me realize that there are so many parts of this industry that are on the cusp of being something. So don't be afraid to like lean into some unknown and get some new skills under your belt. Like if you have the time right now, given the fact that we are all like mostly not commuting and having time back just to invest in ourselves to an extent, take the time to learn something new and try something out.
Professional development.
Gosh, so wise, so wise. Anybody else have any additional thoughts on CG roles?
I haven't recruited recently for CG roles, at least within Netflix animation, but prior experience. I would just say in terms of like preparing for those is just to really don't shortchange yourself. I will always say this, like put your best work on your reel. You know, for a lot of these roles, they are going to be looking at demo reels, whatever it may, if it's for lighting, if it's for character animation. So understanding what each of those different areas are and the particular skill sets that are required for those areas, just make sure that you curate your reel, because even how you curate your reel showcases your eye. And that's really what's important, is your artistic eye. So having a strong, like, I think this is where I get really passionate about why I'm in this industry, because it is such a great blend of tech and art. And having an understanding of the tech to create these beautiful images that show up on screen. And those two, like understanding the two and then telling it in a really great, amazing story is really important. So, you know, when you think about putting your reel together for whatever it might be, just think about like, that's an opportunity for you to tell a really great story and showcase your technical skills and your artistry. And it's bringing all three of those things together. So yeah.
Meow, 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 meow. Okay, I feel like we're out of time. So the last thing I'd like to do is hey, everyone on this panel, what is the best way for a candidate to contact you? Starting with Robin.
I'm old school. I am on LinkedIn, so you can find me at robinellenlin at linkedin.com.
I am also old school, LinkedIn, just LinkedIn Paulina Weeks.
I am on LinkedIn. It's M. Duffy, my first initial and last name. And you can also find me on TikTok. If anybody's on TikTok, it's Michelle.
Hey.
Michelle is so rad. It's mostly videos of cats and really terrible TikTok trends that are like already forgotten about. So I hope to see some of you on my For You page.
I guess I'm old school and new school. You can contact me on LinkedIn and it's right there. Grazia. Oh, where is it? Grazia Como. Or Grazia Recruits on Instagram.
I guess I'm new school. You can find me on Instagram at sneha.recruits, and then you can find me on Twitter at snakecruits.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Okay, so audience out there in the universe, there you have it. Thanks for tuning into today's panel at Lightbox Expo. And we out.